Hey everybody, Nick here, and today I got a review I've been looking forward to for a long time, and that's of this little guy right here. This is the Grand Seiko SBGE001 Spring Drive GMT watch. And this is just absolutely one heck of a watch. And I want to thank my viewer Jim, and my buddy Jim for that matter, for sending this guy along. It's a really generous thing for him to share this watch with me so I can wear it for a couple of weeks and treat it as my own and really get a good opinion about what's going on with this watch and get a sense of it beyond just, old in it, in the box or something like that. So thank you so much, Jim, for that. Next thing I want to do is a quick size comparison here. This guy is a reasonably large watch, so I'm going to try and hold these guys up similarly. This is a Casio Oceanus SBGE001. It's on the channel. But anyways, there's your Oceanus. This right here is a Citizen Perpetual Calendar Quartz Diver. Right here. Try and get the verticality about the same. This guy right here is the Omega Seamaster Aquaterra. So a little bit smaller on this particular guy. And then a more reasonable watch that everybody knows right here. This is your Casio F91W, which is a, slightly less high-end sort of quartz-powered movement. So there you go. And I want to take a second to talk about the spring drive itself. This watch is interesting and unique in part because it's using the Grand Seiko spring drive movement. And that's why the second hand is going perfectly smoothly at the moment. Spring drive is unique in that instead of having a little mechanical escapement where you've got kind of a tick, 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 tick thing caused by a pallet fork and whatnot, this guy is actually using a brake. It's called the Tri-Synchro Regulator. The basic idea here is that the watch generates a little bit of power, which is used to power a quartz crystal, and that quartz crystal gets very precise time information. And it uses that quartz crystal to basically put the brakes on the movement in order to make sure that everything is running at the right timing. So you can think about it as a lot like a car with the gas pedal stuck down. You can maintain your speed just by varying how much brake that you're putting on there. Your brakes are going to catch fire and you're probably going to die. Bad idea. But nonetheless, it's a possibility. And the spring drive here is designed for it. So this means that unlike most watches, which have a distinct tick, 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 tick back and forth, unlike most mechanicals, which have a, usually 4 hertz, 4 times a second tick, or like most quartz watches, which tick once a second, this guy has 0 tick. It's just constantly spinning. The wheel is constantly moving. It's just held in place, and it's held in time by varying the amount of braking force on that little disc, which is keeping the watch keeping very accurate time. The spring drive is really neat. One other final thing I'll say, just to get it out there at the beginning of this, is that this watch retails for about $5,000. So technically, this is a $5,000 Seiko. That was pretty good. Anyways, so yeah, that's gonna come up over and over again, but yeah, let's go on ahead and jump into my usual good, great, bad, and ugly of your Grand Seiko here. Okay, so on the good side, first and foremost for me is actually the lume on this watch is really, really great. Seiko is well known for having really nice lume, and this is no exception. But one of the things that is exceptional here is the amount of lume. I'll take a second here and charge this off camera with a little flashlight here. Well, actually, a really big flashlight. And then I'll bring it back onto camera and you'll see exactly what I mean. If I kind of cover up the external light sources here, you can see that not only are there lume pips at 12, 3, 6, and 9, as well as lume on the hour, minute, and GMT hands, but the entire bezel is lumed, which means that the GMT function works in the dark just as well as anything else. And that's really unusual and really neat. Very often, GMT watches are, you can maybe get lume on the GMT hand, but that's really about it. That's all you get. Whereas this guy is fully lumed, and it's a great effect, and it's pretty magnificent. And the lume lasts all night long. There's no real concerns about it whatsoever. Great, great lume. Second thing is that this watch has actually got surprisingly good water resistance. Hopefully you can see there, you're looking at 20 bar water resistant, which basically means that although this might not be a great choice for deep scuba diving, you can absolutely swim with this. You can absolutely even snorkel or do some very basic tank diving. Saturation diving's off the table, and you probably have better choices for that anyways. But nonetheless, this is really water resistant. There is simply no concern about water with a 200-meter rating. It's going to be just fine. So that's nice. Next thing I'll point out is that it's got quick advance hours, which is nice. If you pull the crown out, at the first position, it winds the watch. Although the watch is fully wound, you can see from the power reserve there. If you pull to the second position, it allows you to advance the hour one step at a time here. And this is great if you're traveling. The second hand doesn't stop. You never lose your accurate time. However, you can very easily advance the hour if you move ahead. This also serves as a quick date adjust, because if you happen to be in a 30-day month and need to advance it one, you can just turn basically 24 little clicks there and you're on to the next date. I think that's a great compromise between another setting for quick set date. That hour feature is spectacular, especially in a watch like this that's pretty accurate. You want to be able to make that adjustment without stopping the accurate timing of the watch in general. Beautiful, beautiful thing. So that's nice. Next thing is that this guy actually flies under the radar a fair amount. If you sit down next to a watch nerd, they will absolutely understand, holy crap, that's a Grand Seiko, that's a GMT, whoa, that's incredible. But for the most part, wearing this around, I didn't get a second glance. People didn't recognize it. People will ask about things like if you're wearing a Rolex or an Omega or something that's a little bit higher end, more higher marketed, but this right here is kind of your little secret. You know that you're wearing a heck of a watch, but nobody else in the room necessarily will. They see Seiko and think, oh yeah, I see those at Macy's. And that can be good and bad for different people. Everybody else, though, just reads Seiko. That's kind of nice. Next thing is that the watch is pretty legible. For a couple of reasons. First off, it's got nice wide hands, which are currently covering each other because I happen to be filming this approximating an hour. But anyways, nonetheless, the hands are nice and wide. They're nicely done. There's a satin finish on the top of the hands that I'm going to see if I can kind of highlight here. But it means that this is going to be legible under a large number of conditions, as opposed to hands that are fully polished, like on this Omega here, which can kind of black out if you're reflecting a black surface. These hands are really nicely done, and there's not all that much crap on the dial. There's the power reserve, there's the GS down here, the Seiko up here, but everything else is by and large just there, so you can look down and see this at a moment's glance. I also want to give props for the GMT hand being entirely red, which means that it's very easy to look down and see, okay, this is the GMT, I can ignore that, or I'm looking at the GMT. It's not ever conflicting with your eyes in terms of looking for the hours or the minutes. So that's really, really nice. This is a watch that you can look down at and really not have any concern whatsoever. I appreciate that very much. Next thing I want to highlight is actually that two finishing on the hands and on the indices as well. Like I said, if you compare a watch that's fully polished on the hands, it's very easy for the hands to disappear, like on this Omega guy. Whereas on this guy, because there's that satin finish on the top, as well as on the top of the indices, it's pretty much legible at any angle, no matter what you're reflecting against. I appreciate that very much. They've done a full mirror polish on the sides of the indices and on the sides of the hands, but that little bit of satin leads to better legibility overall. That's nice. Next thing, the winding on this guy is actually very, very good. Yesterday evening, I just finished my power reserve test, which meant that I was basically down towards 0. I didn't let it go all the way out because I wanted to keep the timing going. But nonetheless, now it's back up to 100%, and I've been wearing it for, it'll be about a little more than 12 hours. And that's pretty impressive. Even just in 7 hours of sitting on the couch, errands, and groceries, it was two-thirds of the way wound back up. You're not going to be worried about this guy running out of juice as you're wearing it. It is very, very easy for this guy to be at 100%. And in fact, most of your life, this power reserve, if it's on your wrist, is just going to be at 100% because they've got their little magic lever system for winding. Beautiful, beautiful thing. Next beautiful, beautiful thing here is the perforated lugs on the side here. What this means is that unlike most watches, which have just a solid surface there, it's actually very easy to swap the strap. All you really need to do is press a little tool into there. That'll press the spring bar in, and it'll come popping loose, as opposed to on something like this where you have to be digging inside this little area trying to grab the flange. Ugly, ugly, ugly. These perforated lugs are very nice if you change your straps around a lot. So I happen to like that, although some people disagree. Next thing, the details on the fit and finish of this guy are incredible, absolutely. All of the indices here are applied. They are little pieces of metal that are laid on there, which is nice. As is the Grand Seiko GS right here, as is the Seiko level, as are the little bars for the power reserve there. All of that is applied. It's separate metal, which is not terribly meaningful, but is very, very neat. I appreciate that very much. The GS lettering here I give extra credit for, because if you take a look at it, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to capture this on the camera, but it actually seems like it has more depth than the Grand Seiko below it. The GS is kind of raised up above it, and that's just beautiful. I appreciate very, very much that little bit of extra depth. It makes the watch a little bit more visually interesting, and that's spectacular. A couple of other things on the finish side. Well, a bunch of other things, actually. The dial on this guy is a deep, inky sort of black. It has no perceptible color. It's got no reflectance, really. It's absolutely just black. So you've got these indices floating in a sea of nothingness, and that's kind of nice. Guidance in a sea of nothingness is just a beautiful thing. And so I like very much that choice of the dial. Next thing, the case back on this guy is nicely done. You've got some nice not chamfering. Well, it is nicely chamfered, but you've got this nice pattern sort of on the inside there. Almost looks like a firework sort of affair. You've got the Grand Seiko lion that I'm going to see if I can focus in on there, which is nice. The writing is well done overall. The case back on the whole is very nice. The case, frankly, is very nice. If you look at the case of this guy, it's pretty spectacular. It's nicely polished, although this guy's been worn 100%. It's a very, very nice watch in that way. Big, big appreciation on that guy. The clasp on it is also rather nice. It is just a single fold-over clasp, but you can see here it's got this nice little Grand Seiko emblem on the bottom there, and it functions spectacularly. You've got these two little, you squeeze these, pops open, no problem, and even the inside, the chamfer on the inside of the deployant here is absolutely, it's polished, and that's really, really nice. And in fact, if you look at the links overall, there's a contrast constantly between polished and brushed. So right here, the outside of the link is brushed here. Then there's this interior part that is polished. The sides of all the links are nicely polished, although perhaps a little bit dirty because I'm handling it. I mean, again, there's that constant polishing here, which is just beautiful. The case sides are polished. There's this nice contrast again between polished and brushed. Right here, this is brush. Right there, that's polished. They have spent so much damn time polishing this watch. It's just spectacular. Honestly, taking a look at this watch and holding it up next to a high-end Omega, high-end Rolex, that kind of thing. I went down to a dealership to do that. At least a Rolex dealer, and it holds up. I honestly feel like the fit and finish on this guy is as good, if not slightly better than Rolex, even though it's half the price of, say, a GMT Master, something along those lines. So the details here and the fit and finish are, frankly, just incredible. It's really, really well done here. Next thing, the GMT function on this guy is pretty spectacular, because what you basically do is you set the GMT and the hours at one setting, so you kind of roll it until the GMT is correct. And by the GMT here, I mean this red hand. This red hand is basically telling us what time it is right now in London, what the UTC is. But you can set it to any time zone. You can set that, for instance, if you live in the United States, but you have a family member who is in Malta for whatever reason. You set the little red hand to Maltese time, and at any given moment, you will know exactly what time it is, AM or PM in Malta. Because right now, I can look down at this and I can see, oh, it's 1600 in the GMT sort of thing. So that's really nice. So you set that, and then you adjust using those quick adjusts to your local time, your hours. You can also use that as a home time zone marker if you travel a lot and always want to know what time it is where you and yours are. At least you're not there, but you know what I mean. That's nice, and you can actually use this bezel for a third time zone. So right now I've got this guy set to GMT, or UTC, but let's say I want to figure out what time it is in Johannesburg, because I got collaborators there. What I do is I know that Johannesburg is it's 2 hours later than GMT, so I set this guy to a 2, and now, in addition to seeing what the GMT time is, because I can look down here and see, oh, it's pointing at 16 on this inner bezel, If I look at the outer bezel, which I've now adjusted, I know that it's 1800 hours in Joburg. And that's kind of a beautiful thing. Sorry, the bracelet's fighting me a little bit here. But nonetheless, I love, love, love that. You can have 3 time zones on your wrist, all in a nice analog, straightforward sort of package. Absolutely spectacular, the GMT function here. It works really, really well. And it's way better than a lot of the GMT functions in the world, which don't include, for instance, the quick hour adjustment and things like that. Really, really nice. And then finally, on the good side, the value is very much good. And I don't mean that, wow, it's incredible that you can get a wristwatch for only $5,000. That's a different sort of question. What I'm saying here is that if you're looking at a high-end wristwatch already, if you're taking for granted the fact that you're going to spend $5,000 on a wristwatch, this is a really value-efficient way to do that. This Grand Seiko has the same levels of fit and finish as your Rolexes, as your Omegas, and it's not quite the Patek levels, but or some of your really high-end, manufacturer stuff. However, you're doing way better for your money in terms of finishing, in terms of value, in terms of a whole bunch of things here than you are with some of the other bigger brands. Particularly if you can get one of these guys used, you can get an absolute incredible amount of value out of this watch relative to your bigger guys. So that's what's good. Holy crap, that's 12 minutes in and of itself. The value is good. The GMT function is really functionally great. It's got incredible details in the fit and finish, perforated lugs, quick winding. It's very legible thanks to some nice finishing tricks here. It flies under the radar, so it's not as ostentatious, which is good. It's got the quick advance hours. It's got 200 meters of water resistance, and the lume on it is just great. Let's talk about what's really, really great about this watch. So on the great side, for me, I love the spring drive movement. Absolutely 100% in love because of a few things. The smooth seconds hand is kind of mesmerizing. I've caught myself just kind of staring at it. I'm a guy who normally wears quartz watches, which have the tick, 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 tick. This guy has completely smooth travel. It's smoother than your Rolexes, which go at about 4 hertz, which means it ticks about 4 times a second. It's smoother than pretty much anything else out there. This is truly continuous, and that's incredible. The durability is also going to be a little bit better on your spring drive movement because there's no pallet fork ticking back and forth. There's no balance spring. There's no balance spring. There's no hairsprings. There's none of that. It's just a rotating disc and an electromagnetic brake, which is good. That's going to just make things, there were fewer issues in there, fewer moving parts to have struggles, which I like very much. Power reserve on this guy is good. You're looking at about 75 hours. I tested full 70 hours, got it down all the way to the bottom there. And the thing is, even at the lowest point in the power reserve, this guy was still very accurate. It went all the way down there, but and I kept it running, and at the end of it, it was still absolutely dead on time. No concern there. Speaking of which, the accuracy. One of my biggest gripes with mechanical watches is that very often they don't have very good accuracy. You're looking at things like, even on your higher-end mechanicals, you're looking at losing or gaining 5 seconds a day or something like that. The COSC chronometer spec is, -2 seconds a day up to +4. This guy has been running 0.04 seconds a day since I've had it over the 2 weeks I've been wearing it. And it's been pretty consistent that way. Whether it's on my wrist or not, it's been very, very good in that way. Simply put, it's accurate enough that it doesn't matter. It's as accurate as any of my quartz watches are. Actually, that's not true. Some of them are a little bit more accurate because they're specially tuned, but still. Accuracy is not a concern with this movement anymore, unlike with a lot of mechanicals, where you can start getting to well, is that really the time? This is great. If you run 2 months on this guy between your 30-day tweaks, you're looking at a maximum of 30 seconds fast, and that's just not bad. So the spring drive movement on the whole is just really neat. I mean, Seiko's the only people doing it. Everybody else is using Swiss lever escapement, or maybe coax if you're looking at Omega, coaxial escapement, that is. But this guy is doing something entirely different, and I just love that. And it's a mechanical watch that's not only mechanical, because it's got the quartz, it's got the power generator, but in a lot of ways, I think it's a little bit better and a little bit nicer than conventional mechanical in the accuracy and the durability sense and in the smoothness. And so for me, this is a great movement. I love, love, love this. And then throw in the GMT and everything else. this spring drive is just a tour de freaking force. So I love this movement 100%, and that's what's great about this. The Seiko spring drive movement is magnificent. Let's talk about the bad here. First off, this is not a great watch if what you're looking to do is spend money to get status. Everybody looks down at your wrist and sees a Rolex or, to an extent, an Omega, Patek, something along those lines, and thinks, oh, that's a Rolex. I know that that's really expensive. This person must be muckety-muck. I should do nice things for this, or whatever that fantasy goes. But, you know, those are really great in that way. You look down at a Rolex and it's a Rolex. However, Seiko doesn't have that cachet. They sell Seiko watches at Walmart. People don't understand that, no, Grand Seiko is really excellent. And so they just look, they see Seiko like, oh, it's a watch. Okay, moving on. This also means that you don't have the Rolex sort of emergency ATM effect that everybody fantasizes about. That you could, anywhere in the world, you could sell your Rolex and get a plane ticket home. I mean, I don't know how real that actually is, but it's something that you should actually consider here. This is $5,000, but if you walk into a random pawn shop, you're probably not going to get $5,000 for it, as opposed to a Rolex sub, where you're probably going to get good money out of it no matter where you are in the world. So that's something to keep in mind. Next issue for me is actually the link adjustment system. See if I can get this in focus. These are screw-down links, but the thing is, it's a weird version of that. I'm going to make a video that shows how to add and remove links, but basically what you have to do is unscrew this side, then you unscrew this side, and this gives you two tiny little screws, and then in the middle is just a boring little bar. And that bar is what's actually holding these two, holding the links together. The screws just serve to keep that loose bar inside that little channel. It works fine, and it gives a nice, smooth, very fluid sort of feeling to the bracelet. However, it's a total pain in the neck to work with. I am not looking forward to resizing this guy again, to sending it back to my buddy Jim. That's life, but I much prefer a sort of a bolt-style screw-down link like you see on a lot of other sorts of watches. So, whatever. Next thing, I'm not a big fan of the fact that only 4 of these hour markers are loomed. Like I said earlier, charge this guy up again, only 12, 3, 6, and 9 are loomed. I'd like to see at least little tiny loom pips for each of the other hours in there. Not the end of the world, but it bugs me a little bit that those aren't in there, especially when they could have just loomed these little dots here, and it would have been okay. It's still legible, it's not a big deal, but it is something to keep in mind. It makes it a little bit harder to read overnight, for instance. Next thing, if you look at the tips of the hands, I'll try and zoom in here to show it to you, the hands are actually squared off. This is a weird little thing, but for me, I actually very much do prefer when there is a definitive point to the end of the hand here, like on this little Omega guy, because that really gives you a much better sense of precision here. Don't get me wrong, you're plenty precise, but it's just a little harder to read something that's squared off at the end, in my opinion, than if it were just outright pointed. So I wish that those hands were a little bit more pointy. Not a big deal, but it is something to keep in mind. Next thing on this guy that actually really did surprise me is that there is a fair amount of rotor noise. As you're winding this watch, and I'm not going to be able to get this on camera, yeah, you're probably not hearing that. Because of Seiko's little magic lever arrangement, you can actually hear on occasion, especially if you're doing something like that where you're swishing the watch around, you can actually hear it charging, and that's, I don't know, it feels a little bit off. It's apparently the case with every Grand Seiko spring drive, so it's not a big deal, and it's not something you notice just walking around. It's not so bad like on the little SNK guys, but it is a little bit strange. Most watches on the higher end wind silently. This guy doesn't. So, whatever. Next thing, for me, it's a very large watch. This is not something that goes well on a very small wrist. For me, it's almost, frankly, a little bit much. If I slide it onto my wrist here, sorry for the arm hair, this is really overwhelming my wrist in a very real way. This is not a small watch by anybody's standards, and to me, that's a bit of a loss. I feel like this watch could have been scaled down a little bit more, maybe not horologically speaking, but at least design-wise, and been a little bit more compelling for it. If you've got small wrists, this may not end up being a great choice for you. So keep that in mind. Next thing, there's not an anti-reflective coating on the dial, unlike, for instance, on this Citizen here, so you can really see the glass if I put these both in the same position, you can see the glass on the Citizen, on the Seiko, a lot more readily than you can the Citizen here. You just see much more reflection. And the anti-reflective coatings are not generally the most durable things ever. I'm not super concerned about it, but it does bug me a little bit. For this kind of a price, that's something I might want a little bit more of. So there you go. The power reserve dial on this guy is honestly a little bit much. It winds very well, so you're never really concerned about the power reserve. It was great for being able to test this guy and get a sense of that, but having it right there on the dial and cluttering things up a little bit feels a little bit off to me. I kind of wish that either they hadn't included it, they maybe made it all gray or a very dark sort of matte black so you can only see it if you're looking for it, or better still, if they'd gone to a transparent case back and put the power reserve back there, as I've seen on some higher end watches out there in the world. That way, if you need to see the power reserve, you certainly can, but it's not something that's in your way every time you look down at the watch. That's one of the things that bugs me a little bit more about this guy. I tend to like uncluttered bezels, and that's some bezel clutter right there. Next thing, this sapphire bezel, I kind of go back and forth about. You can see here that there's metal, then there's sapphire, and then and so this bezel on the outside here, unlike a lot of watches which have either engraved sort of bezel work or a ceramic sort of inlay, this guy's got the glass. And that means that at any given moment, this guy might be a little bit more difficult to read. If I kind of angle it this way, you're not really going to be able to read the bezel particularly well. You have to find an angle at which it works. In some ways, that's nice. It makes the bezel a little bit less in-your-face, bam, than something like this guy over here. However, it also reduces that legibility. It allows the loom thing, which is neat, so I go back and forth on this. But in practice, all the pictures make this bezel look very black, but it very seldom does look black. More often it looks like a gray or a smoky sort of thing, and that's, I don't know. Next thing on this guy, on the bad side, is the price. $5,000 is a lot of money, absolutely 100%. That's a silly amount of money. That's a lot to spend on watches, absolutely. I can kind of see it here, though. I will say that much. It doesn't feel particularly frivolously like you're just paying a lot for the name. Let's face it, the name is actually kind of a demerit here for people who don't know what Grand Seiko is. And the design is well done. There's nothing I can point to with this watch and just say, nope, that was really lazy. Actually, I'm sorry, there is one thing, and we'll cover that in the ugly. But nonetheless, you're getting good value out of that money, as I've said, especially relative to something like your $8,000 Omegas that are really not up to that par. But the thing is, it's still just a whole lot of money. $5,000 is a lot to spend on a wristwatch, and that is bad. You're tying up a lot of cash there. Some people won't care. That's great. The compounding side of that is that resale values on this guy are not super stellar. If you buy a Rolex, for instance, you're going to get your money out of it, plus or minus, when you sell it. It could be an investment. Gear is a bad investment in general, but you know that you're not going to take too much of a bath if you buy a real Rolex, keep it in good condition, and sell it later on down the road. This guy, though, you buy it retail at like $5,000 or so, but looking around on the forums, if you sell this guy, you're looking at something like $3,800 on the used market. So if you buy this guy at retail and you sell it later, I hope you brought your loofah, because you're going to be taking a bath. But this also, on the other side, means that there are really great deals out there if you're willing to be patient. These guys don't come up very often. I'm seeing postings maybe once a year trying to sell these guys. But if you can snag one, you're going to get an incredible screaming deal on a watch that's got $8,000 quality finishing, but you can get it for way less than that. So that's what's bad about this guy. The resale values aren't that great. The price is definitely a factor, shall we say. The sapphire bezel looks more smoky than black, and that can be a little tough for legibility. The power reserve is a little bit distracting on the dial. The lack of anti-reflective coating is a little bit weird at this kind of price point. It's a bit large. It's very large. It's got some rotor noise. The flattened hand tips are a little bit nitpicky, weird to me. I don't love the fact that the hour indices aren't loomed there. The link adjustment is just a pain in the neck, and it's not a great watch if you're looking to show off. But if you're not, hey, no problem. Let's talk about the ugly, because sadly there's a little bit of ugly here. So on the ugly front, there are really 2.5 issues. The first half issue is kind of a little nitpick, but it is something I want to highlight. At the end of the day, this $5,000 spring drive movement is very, very good, and it may be at the top of the mechanical pack, but it can still be bested in terms of durability, power reserve, and accuracy by some of your, well, high-end but lower price quartz models, especially considering your Grand Seiko quartz, Citizens, the Citizen lineup, even your really high accuracy quartzes elsewhere. No one's making a quartz GMT that's this good, sadly, but still, that is something to keep in mind. Functionally, at the end of the day, you're getting an incredible watch, and it's pretty much without compromises, but at the end of the day, you're still getting something that is, well, not quite the high-end quartz standards. And that's a little bit sad at this kind of price point. That's not a big deal, though. It's ugly only because it's ugly to me. It's probably not ugly to most people. Something that is much more universally ugly is the lack of any kind of quick adjustment on the bracelet here. If we take a look at the bracelet, we can see that, unlike on a lot of even your lower-end watches, like your, this is a Casio Oceanus here, and if you pop this little spring bar out and then move it a little bit in this direction, well, you're going to get yourself a extra millimeter, maybe millimeter and a half on this band, which means if your wrist swells a little bit, all you need is some kind of a sharp tool and you slide it that way. Your Omegas, your Rolexes, your Tudors are by and large including some sort of a quick adjustment system, like the Rolex Glide Lock, the Omega's got the Tudor's got the Pelagos has got that really neat system. But either way, it's a little bit ugly to me that on this $5,000 watch, the only adjusting you can do is by adding or subtracting links. And that's no good. Not a big fan of that lack of micro adjust. That's something that if you're not traveling with the links to the watch and your wrist swells up for whatever reason, you're completely out of luck. You're taking the watch off and you're watchless. That bugs the crap out of me. That's the only thing about this watch that honestly feels lazy. Like, no, Grand Seiko, you should have done better than that. And so I really, really wish I could see that guy on the bracelet there. Then finally on the ugly front, the maintenance costs of this guy are going to be high, and they're going to be higher than most of your mechanical watches out there because your local watchmaker, if you've got a local watchmaker even, can do nothing here. Might be able to polish the case or something, but you still want to send it back for that. It's really nicely polished. But nonetheless, because this is a spring drive movement and because all the parts are Seiko proprietary and it's a very strange movement to start with, nobody locally can handle this. So instead, you're going to need to do about every 5 years, you're going to need to pay about $800 to send this guy to Seiko, and that'll take a few months, apparently, based on forum posts. So this means that over 30 years, in terms of maintenance, if you're using their recommended interval, you're going to pay for the watch again in terms of maintenance, and that's a lot of money. Over 30 years, this is a $10,000 watch, assuming that Seiko service prices don't go up, and that itself is kind of an issue. And this also means that if Seiko ever stops making parts for this guy, no skilled watchmaker can help you. This is one major advantage of your higher-end mechanical watches that are using something relatively standard like a Swiss lever escapement or something. Even if a part fails, a watchmaker can always make a new one. With the spring drive, that's just not the case. And so that's really ugly. The fact that you're in for $800 every 5 years or so, as well as a bunch of wait time, and that Seiko is the only game in town, frankly in the world, that services this. So you really got to be a little bit more careful about that. So those are the three ugly things here. The maintenance costs are very high and Seiko's the only game. There's no micro adjust on the bracelet, which is lazy. And durability, power reserve, accuracy-wise, you're still just getting in the territory of your high-end quartz, which is less expensive. So let's talk final conclusions here. So, conclusions. This watch is in many ways, it feels like a watch that's without functional compromises. Unlike a lot of your mechanical watches, it's actually very, very accurate, and that's great. The GMT function on it is also supremely well done. Very, very good there. It's legible. It's got an easy-to-read date without the damn Cyclops obscuring the hands. It's got a great interface on it. The durable, it's going to be more durable than most. It's got a great power reserve. And you're getting a much better feeling of value than you do paying more money for bigger brands. So that's kind of spectacular. The only real functional issues here The quick adjust, the fact that the bracelet doesn't have one, but that's hopefully something they'll fix, and the fact that maintenance needs to go through Seiko, and that's kind of par for the course these days on the higher end. Yet, on top of all this functional goodness, this is still art. The details are spectacular, the construction is stellar, and in terms of horological art, the spring drive movement is something incredible. It's different and it's spectacular. So you're getting something that is high jewelry, high function, and high horology, and all of those things combined for me make this a gem. This is a great watch, and it's something I'm going to recommend to anybody who wants a GMT mechanical watch. Absolutely 100%. If you're on the fence between this guy and the GMT Master, I'm also going to send you this direction too. Now, don't get me wrong. The GMT Master is a great watch, and frankly, size-wise, I would prefer that guy. But this guy has got a lot of advantages. And Rolex has more cachet, obviously, but the price here is, well, half the price, which is great. And then the finishing on it is more skilled. It's more polished. It just feels a little bit better finished in the Grand Seiko here than on the Rolex. This guy is also going to be more accurate in general, although you might get a particularly good one out of the box from Rolex. The spring drive is way cooler, and like I said, at the end of the day, it's half the price, so you can't really argue too hard with that. So if you're looking for a GMT watch, I would really suggest you check one of these guys out before you go whole hog on the GMT Master. Then, in terms of my personal life, a lot of people have been asking, oh, Nick, is this going to get an expensive review? Are you going to be rushing out to get one? Unfortunately, I kind of realized that this isn't really a watch for me. I mean, it's spectacular. I've loved looking down on it, and I'm really thankful for the opportunity. But for me, at least, for my wrists, it feels too big. It feels a little too tall, honestly, and that's not a compromise I can really afford to make on a watch that costs that much money. And frankly, that's also a little too much money for me. And that's kind of where this comes down to at the end of the day. The biggest question as to whether you should buy this watch or not, if you feel like it's a good choice, is whether you're happier with $5,000 on your wrist or in your savings account. If $5,000 seems like a lot of money to you, this is probably not a great choice. I mean, the maintenance is going to be non-trivial, ongoing cost here. And there's nothing functionally that you get in here that you might not in a higher-end sort of quartz watch, although the GMT here is really good. And after a few days of wearing this guy, even for review, it kind of becomes the thing I'm looking down at to see the time. It disappears a little bit more. And if money is any kind of concern for you, no matter your love of high horology, $5,000 put aside for emergencies is probably going to feel a little bit better on the wrist than this might. But the thing is, that's not who this is after. This is not after people who really are thinking that hard about the price tag. If money is not a big concern and you just want a really great watch, you found one. This is spectacular because you get a watch that's got really great horology, really great horological chops. You get a strong sense of art, and you get craftsmanship and just jewelry here. You get something that's off the beaten path, which not everybody's wearing, but another watch there to look at and go, oh, yeah, you're thinking here. But most of all, what you're getting here is a spectacular functional tool that lives on your wrist. And it'll serve you very well for years to come. So this is a spectacular watch. Thank you again, Jim, for giving me the opportunity. And if you get a chance, check one out. Really, really great. Hope this has been interesting, that you had a good time, and that you have yourselves an absolutely wonderful rest of your day. Bye now.